Hi peeps! So for today's installment in the Tarot and Witchcraft Q&A series, I'm going to be answering one specific viewer's kind of set of questions. This follows, it's like a series of questions kind of all along the same topic. And so I'm just going to be sharing my views, my ideas, my thoughts on these questions. And this video is going to comprise just this set of questions because I do think it's going to take me a little bit to explain my viewpoint and why I feel the way that I do. I just want to start with a disclaimer of these are like my personal opinions and my personal thoughts and feelings and beliefs. They don't have to be yours and you don't have to agree with them for us to get along. It's just where I've come to on my path, not only within my own spiritual experience, but just so many years reading for people, reading people's loved ones who've passed as well. It's just kind of where I've ended up in my own personal belief system. So the first aspect of the question was kind of just getting my take on hypothesis from some people who follow a left-hand path. And the first question was, do you believe in having a soul? If so, do you think some are finite and others continue indefinitely? So I'm gonna start by answering that first half of the question that the viewer shared with me. So do I believe in having a soul? Yes, I do believe that we have a soul or ka energy that is infinite as an aspect of the divine that's exploring human experience. And I do believe that we choose to incarnate as many times as we feel is appropriate for us and our kind of desired experience as a soul. I believe we kind of have like a map that we set up before we choose to incarnate into a certain life, and that we're going to encounter, experience certain things on our journey, people, places, things that are going to help us explore a desired theme within any given incarnation. So like, let's say, you know, the theme is wanting to expand upon the experience of love in any given human life, then we would choose to have certain experiences, often the contrast of that, so that we can open up more as a soul, expand more as a soul in regards to that kind of theme. So like, I think we do have like a storyline that we want to explore, that we choose to explore in any given human incarnation. But I think how we choose to interact with that lesson, we have free will in regards to once we incarnate in the human form. So from a soul perspective, I think we choose to have individual soul experiences. And then I do think that we have a soul tribe who are other souls that we tend to incarnate with throughout various human life experiences so that we can continue to flesh out another theme more fully together, right? So having different various incarnations with other souls as well within our soul tribe or soul family, that we explore different like lenses, different variations upon that theme together, right? So that's what I've come to believe just from the work that I do and reading so many different people over the years. It's like really reiterated that for me. It's a personal belief that I have. Again, everyone has their own view, but I do feel that we have a soul that is infinite, that we have ka that is infinite, that we continue to incarnate into different human experiences in order to grow and to evolve as that soul. I do believe that that soul is an aspect of the infinite, great spirit, whatever you want to call that. I do believe that we have soul tribes that we incarnate with in various human lives to explore different experiences. I also believe that we have a spirit tribe, which are a series of deity or guides that tend to journey with us throughout these various lives. How that's explored in each life is going to be unique and different to that individual life. And that applies for the soul tribe and the spirit tribe. Do I think some souls are finite and some continue indefinitely? I think that that's a choice that is made as the soul is incarnating through various lives. I do think that there comes a time when certain souls choose not to incarnate any longer on the earth plane, but that doesn't mean that they're not elsewhere on another plane of existence incarnating in a various aspect or version of life in another dimension. There we go. I wanted to say dynamic and I was like, that's not the right word. It's dimension. In another dimension. So I do think that there's probably a finite number of Earth lives, but that doesn't mean that I think that there isn't life in other planes of existence that are being explored as well. And I think if you look at like a core tenet of any type of energy work that you do, once you delve into that type of work, or any type of shamanic work, or even from a scientific perspective, like there are infinite lives, there are infinite versions of you, and it plays out across time and space. Like time and space is all happening at once. So it's all facets, it's all lenses that we're exploring. The next aspect of the question was, what about the construction of having a higher self? Is that sometimes misunderstood and even dangerous, as if one were to split oneself from the earthly state of existence and have to achieve something outside of themselves? So higher self to me is more conscious connection to the soul. So it's like the higher, I'm going to use higher here in quotations. It's an outside perspective of the finite human experience. So let's say this version of Racine, the human version of Racine here, who's incarnated as Racine in this life, is currently going through a very difficult and visceral experience in regards to an aspect of her life. But the perspective of the higher self, or the soul perspective, is that this is ultimately serving my evolvement and growth as a soul in regards to the desired theme that I wanted to explore when I chose to incarnate as Racine. And so as I go through this experience, even though from the human perspective it's painful and I don't necessarily want to do it, from the larger perspective, from higher self perspective, which is just a term that's been like chosen, right? Like you could say anything for that, but I do think that there's a soul perspective. And when we tap into that through meditation, through journeying, through communication with our guides, we then have an understanding of our big picture, which, let me tell you, from the experience of my childhood, was one of the most deeply healing beliefs for me to step into, was that from a higher perspective, my soul did choose this experience so that I could explore that theme at a very deep level in this life. Particularly if you know me personally, you would know that this would really apply to my experience with my father. And to understand that we have incarnated many times, and this is just one particular specific experience in human form where we're having a very visceral interchange with each other throughout our lives. To know that for me has been really healing, and to be able to see the higher self or soul perspective of that journey together was actually very healing for me. So it's something that's really been very much a balm to my soul, to look at things from higher perspective or soul perspective outside of just the finite human experience. It helps you to understand why you might be going through something that's really, really painful or traumatic. So I do believe that there's a higher self, but I don't think we're split from it. I don't think we're always conscious of the soul perspective and the human perspective in uniting them, because sometimes the human perspective is just like you're in it, right? Like you're in the trenches of it. But when we can breathe, which we have to connect to the body to do, and tap into soul perspective, then we can have a larger understanding, and we can come from a point of power in the present in how we want to respond to something, right? So that's really where I stand with higher self. Yes, I do feel that the higher self exists, but I don't think it's like a heavenly body that we're detached from, that we're separated from. If we were meant to ascend the human body, we wouldn't have chosen to be a human. We would have chosen to be a guide or an angelic presence, a spirit presence for another individual in our tribe. When we choose the human body, it's because we're meant to have the human experience, which means we have to be in body. So I don't think that the human experience is something less than or something evil that must be in the Christian religion I grew up in. Like, we kind of have to punish the body, right? Because the body is sinful. That's a very Christian perspective. In the perspective that I've come to embrace, and that that is all I have experienced in reading and connecting to etheric realm. It's that this is an experience that's really the experience of a soul that's advancing on its journey. And so this experience in the realm of contrast and holding a physical body is a gift, and it's meant to be explored, enjoyed, and it is as spiritual as the higher self perspective. It's a different lens with which we're exploring a theme as a soul. It is not separate to the experience or something to be ashamed of. Instead, the more that we venerate the experience and live fully in the body, the more that we evolve as a soul. So the next part of the question was, if you have to, so I'm going to read this and then I'm going to try to say what I was coming away from the question with. So going back to this higher self aspect, does it become that you have to achieve something outside of themselves? And what about trying to destroy the ego, which seems impossible to me personally, as it is part of the inevitable experience of being an individual? I don't think that destroying the ego should be a goal at all in spirituality. In fact, I think it's one of the most harmful aspects of New Age thinking, that the ego is something evil that we have to obliterate. Absolutely not. To go back to what I was just saying, in choosing to incarnate in the human experience, you're choosing to have an ego. So it is a part of the experience, one that must be, or not must, but because you might be exploring, not honoring it, but one that if you are moving in unison with this idea that this premise that I've started the video with, this belief system that I'm talking about, that works for me, the ego is actually an important part of the process, and it's a voice that's brought to the table. In fact, shadow work helps you to be able to integrate the wounds so that the ego isn't acting from an unconscious space, but instead then can become something that is a healthy part of the discussion of being a human, and is able to provide you with healthy boundaries, an ability to say no, an ability to protect yourself and your loved ones, and an experience of self-worth, which allows you to value your human body and your human experience and show up to the table fully in regards to all the other characters in the story that involves your human experience in this body. So eliminating, obliterating, destroying the ego, punishing the ego is not part of the story. It's not going to help you. It's actually going to create more of a fractured experience from my experience. In the physical community of which I have been a part for many years here where I live, for a very long time, there was a very large community of New Age Course in Miracle followers. And being on the outside of that and watching how all is an illusion, try to ascend the physical, the ego is evil, how can we eradicate ego? Watching that play out in people's lives over a period of time, again, I was not a part of that group at all. I think was very detrimental to watch what happened to people as they tried to bring that into everyday life for themselves. Also, toxic positivity is another example of this. This is an example of ego and shadow, where we're only going to look at what's safe and pretty, and we're not going to acknowledge what's bad so that the bad doesn't get us. I think both of these kind of extremes that you see really do an injury to being able to live fully in body, in the fullest expression of the human experience, because you chose the physical body. You chose to incarnate in the physical body. So you know, one would think you would want to have the full experience. You paid for this trip, baby. Like, buckle up and live it all the way. So for me, I think that destroying the ego is absolutely pointless and not helpful in the long run. Instead, working on shadow wounds, inner child healing, and an integration of fractured aspects of ourselves allows there to be everyone at the table in regards to your human experience. And I kind of look at it that way when I do shadow work mentoring programs, or when I sit in session with people. it's very much about bringing every aspect of you to the table so that everyone's involved in the decision making, and then it becomes conscious action instead of reaction. In that way, you don't have to eradicate the ego because it has a healthy voice. It feels seen, heard, loved, understood, and then it's not unconsciously running the show of your life. So these are some of my thoughts. I do feel very strongly how I feel, so I won't be changing my mind, I don't think, anytime soon on this. Again, this comes from personal journeying with my guides and working with clients over a decade now, and really seeing in session what comes through as messages and what comes through as story for people in their journey. It just has made it very clear for me personally that this is my belief system as I move through the world as Racine. So if something resonates, please feel free to try it on for size. Is it a belief that you want to walk around with? If you disagree, that's totally fine as well, because I also don't believe that there's one truth. Once you look at things from a perspective of multiple souls incarnating through multiple experiences to have experiences, you understand that there is no one truth. So why would I need anyone to line up with my beliefs, and why would my beliefs need to line up with anyone else's? It's about what speaks to us. And one's faith and one's beliefs should be something that does feel inspiring, comforting, and something that allows for evolution and growth, right? So I thought these were a wonderful set of questions. It was like a joy to sit and think about how I was going to respond to this and to get a chance to share my thoughts on this with all of you. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. And if you have any other questions you want to ask for this series, feel free to share them in the comment section down below, or to hit me up with a DM on Insta with the questions. I'm more than happy to add it to my list and to offer clarification. I am sending you all, as always, much love and many blessings. I'll see you in the next video.